Do we start? Do we kick it off?
Yeah, just 1 second.
Take your time.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone, and a very warm welcome to today's session, The Unseen Waves of Disruption, part of our GROW webinar series. GROW is an executive program for early mid-level managers aspiring to grow into business critical roles. It's my pleasure to introduce our speaker for today, Professor Niraj Athavle. Professor Athavle has spent over 30 years in global financial markets, including serving in leadership positions at some of the largest global financial institutions. Working at the forefront of financial derivatives in global markets, he's had a ringside seat to understanding how these operate and develop deep insights in areas linked to banking, international finance, and global markets. In his previous role at JP Morgan, Professor Athavle served as chairman of the board of directors at JP Morgan C Limited, managing director, head of global clients for APEC, and head of sales for Singapore. Thank you for joining us today, sir. Over to you.
Thanks so much, Mac. And I'm having a bit of a technological issue, so I may need you to help me with the slides. So,
Yes.
as of now, Hardik and Pranav, good to have you guys here. It's, I think, it's in some sense, if we don't have too many people, we can probably make this a lot more interactive and have a discussion. Feel free to use the chat if there are any questions, and I'll try to sort of give you a quick view of how we're looking at. So, Mehak, if you could just start with the slides, and maybe we go to the first one. So the the objective here for me is, I mean, you guys are probably experts in your business. I'm not going to be able to pretend that I can tell you how to do things better, but I do want to give you a different set of lenses, if you will. And by that, I mean maybe take you a step back or two, as the case may be, to try and see how we can actually look at disruption. And why disruption? Because it's very fascinating that when we think of disruption, we have been basically programmed to think of disruption in a particular way, and it tends to be very narrow and very, so how should I say, blinkered in our fashion in how we're looking at it. So let me kick it off, and I was going to put something on Mentimeter, but given it's just the two of you, if I were to ask you guys, what does disruption mean to you? If you had to put down a word or two or whatever, what would those be? I'm asking if you guys, I mean, yeah, if you want to use this, let's use this. Otherwise, Mehak, we can just skip forward. It's just Hardik and Pranav at the moment.
See,
They can put it on the chat, and I can read. Okay, so Hardik says change. That's interesting. And not too many people will think of
disruption.
change.
Am I
Sorry, go ahead.
audible? Hello.
Yes, yes,
Yes. So I feel that any change which brings a major change in the market. For example, you can see AI now, but then how this bubble is also growing. But then investment in the data centers that a lot of the companies are putting. So some companies might feel that it's a bubble, but then we also have to see that proper investment is being put into the data centers. So I think kind of AI might be a disruption to many businesses
sure.
around the world.
Yeah. Okay. So let's kick it off. I mean, I don't. This is not meant to be a quiz, guys. So I'm happy to. So if you think of disruption, is it an event? Is it a blind spot? Is it a series of events? How do you think about it? There's a lots of ways in which you can think about it. Disruption could be defined in my sense as a event. So there's some stuff I put on the slides and whatever, which essentially either stops an activity or an existing process or dramatically changes the way you have. So to the point you were making, I think, Hardik, is you were talking of change, and I think that is absolutely right. But notice, nobody talks of whether disruption is anticipated or unanticipated. The one that is anticipated rarely ever causes the heartaches and headaches that we tend to think about. Typically, when we talk of disruption as a negative, it tends to be something that we have not anticipated, not thought of, not thought through. And that is what gives us, and therefore the organization and our teams, a lot of heartburn. So, what I want to try and do is to try and open your mind, or show you shine a bit of a spotlight, if you will, on things that people don't usually think about when they think about disruptions, and yet can be very, very crucial and critical. Mehak, next slide, please.
Yeah.
Okay, so disruptions are inevitable. Anybody who is looking at disruption to expect that they will always be bulletproof, that they will be able to understand how exactly they will be able to handle disruption, pardon my language, is kidding themselves. Simply because disruptions will change as we change, as things change in the environment, as things change, in what is happening around us. And increasingly, sorry, resilience is not optional. For me, it is what I call strategic armor. If you're not willing to look at building a resilient team, you are asking for trouble. You're essentially asking for trouble because you have not thought through the things that will cause you difficulty. You have not thought through the things that could be. And the mistake people make is resilience equal to I have exactly a plan for everything that could come. By fundamental definition, that is just not possible. When I say you have to become resilient, it is your thinking that has to become resilient. It is the manner in which you approach things that has to become resilient. Because disruption is not something happened, a month ago, and now you can just go away because it's not going to happen again. Something or the other will constantly happen. Different things may happen. Same thing may happen in a different style. It is not episodic, to say the least. It tends to be almost in a continuum. Something or the other is always happening in an organization, and depending on the kind of organization you run, depending on the dependencies you have, depending on the things that your process is involved, you may or may not have a wide series of vulnerabilities that you need to account for. Increasingly, and you guys mentioned it just now about AI, previously technology was considered a disruptor, but not at such a rapid change. AI is changing that game. AI, agentic AI especially, is now coming in so fast that we don't have time to react before something new has come up. But also geopolitics. I mean, if you think about it, there was a time when we could happily carry on with our business, not worrying about what will happen from a geopolitical standpoint. Increasingly, that is not the case anymore. You have to worry about. That's why more and more of us are actually wanting to know what does tariff entail. This whole Xi Trump happened that summit that happened in Busan. What's going to be the spillover of that? Think of it this way: the first time Trump came around as president, it was actually not so bad a situation for India. This time around, it's been a pretty tough one. So, what has changed? Prime Minister Modi was still there. President Trump was still there in the first one. This time around, everybody came back thinking, oh, Trump is here, so therefore it has to be good for India. And how wrong have we been on that one? So there can be a lot of things that can happen on this. And I want to just leave two, three other things that can be things that could cause disruption. We don't think of climate change as disruption, or policies or social shifts. These are equally important when you start thinking about what are the things that could cause change. Sometimes inadvertent change, sometimes this change is forced on us, and a lot of these things will therefore then logically take it to the disruption is often given a very negative connotation, and more often than not it tends to have that. But disruption always need not be negative. It just means that a process is there that has been changed, affected, i.e. disrupted, and therefore you need to be able to do something about it. Which leads me to the point about resilience. Resilience means you're trying to anticipate it. It is a way in which you think about stuff and your ability to change as change is presented to you. So if something is thrown at you and you freeze, you become what they call the proverbial deer in the headlights, then you have a problem. If you get an unseen or an unknown kind of a situation hit you, then do you have the ability to say, okay, hang on, what are the things that I need to do about this? How do I dissect this into smaller bite-sized problems? Can I tackle the stuff that I can know of? Can I tackle the stuff that I think I can handle? And then some of the unknown unknowns, and then basically come back with a set of solutions that will help me absorb the change, adapt to it, and then effectively get ahead with it. Next slide, please, Mac. I think this may have something to do with the manner in which I created the slides. That it's sort of. So if you think about this, to the point I was making, I mean, how many of us actually anticipated this? The first one is, of course, a bit of a take on Sunny Deol's Tariq pe Tariq. Now we are talking of tariff pe tariff. Trump's re-election was seen in a mixed bag. A lot of people were excited in India saying this is going to be so good. There's going to be a new dawn for US. India relationships, and lots of wonderful things will happen. And yet here we are. We've been one of the most highest tariffed nations. The so-called bromance that was happening between Trump and Modi has all disappeared. There's nothing there. Of course, now Trump is coming back saying, I love Modi, I can come back in 26 and this, that, and the other. But we don't actually know what the ramifications of some of these things are. Russia, Ukraine. Who thought this would happen? And it did. And then we have not, a lot of people in India did not think that this would affect us. It's so far away. We are neither pro one or the other. Why should change? Energy became a problem. How many of us thought that the US will weaponize SWIFT and therefore put sanctions in some sort of fashion on Russia? Increasingly, countries like China, Russia, and to some extent the Middle East, and I do think to some extent India has to worry about this. SWIFT is something that the US can and does control. It has shown that if it doesn't like what you're doing, it can switch off the tap. Think of the so many other things that can happen in that fashion. Do we really think about all of these things? I'm fairly certain we don't. I mean, if you ask large part of the organizational structure, regardless of what field you are in, and you ask them what do you think is the risk that a swift sanction or a inability to handle transactions on swift will be a problem for your organization, there won't be too many who will have thought through it. The Gaza issue, right? Leave the politics aside. I have no real desire to get into the politics, but it has caused a logjam. There are protests, so that is causing a logjam in terms of universities, in terms of organizations. People are getting polarized into thinking you're either pro one side or pro the other, or you're anti this or you're anti that. That is causing schisms within the organization. So that creates a culture issue. That creates a issue of how do you keep the team together. It also causes an issue if your goods are seen to be, pro one or the other, and people start boycotting those goods and services. That's a huge disruptive event. You might say, I have nothing to do with this. I have no political role to sort of uh, play in this. And yet, you're going to get affected by this. So there are global spillovers. This to me is a very completely unanticipated thing and is a hardcore geopolitical issue. It has no real immediate economic ramifications. And yet, the spillover is an economic ramification of what is happening. The tariff issues causing chip and rare earth shortages. The tussle between the US and China, in a manner of speaking, has created an issue where one side is saying, I won't give you chips, the other side saying, I won't give you rare earths. And this is now going across the globe to looking at other countries where one has production facilities, the other one is using production facilities and things like that. And this is also going to cause a problem because, for the sake of argument, the US is saying to, I don't know, let's make it up, a country somewhere in Southeast Asia saying, hey, if you're using NVIDIA chips, make sure it doesn't go to China. China is also saying the same thing. China is telling its state-owned entities saying, if you're using computers, make sure you don't have US chips in it. So the level of distrust has gone to a point where global, trades, globalization or whatever has become a bit of a misnomer. Have we seen peak globalization? I'm not sure. Maybe we have, but we've definitely taken a step back from globalization. Have we sort of reversed it completely? No, of course not. And I don't think that can happen, at least not in a hurry. But the fact is that nobody would have thought that something like a chip shortage or a rare earth shortage is something that we will see at our doorsteps. And last but not the least, the whole Gaza issue or other issues has also all freight costs have gone spiraling, because now people, instead of going through the because of the geopolitical issues in the Middle East and are not going through the Suez, are going around the Cape of Horn. Uh, People are now trying the Arctic route to try and see if they can send stuff faster from China all the way to the US and so on and so forth. So the point being, it is not right, or actually it is a big injustice to ourselves and as managers if we are not able to think beyond the narrow confines of what we've been used to thinking about. I don't need to tell anybody that COVID was a very scary episode, and yet it happened overnight, well, in a manner of speaking, caused disruption to the extent that we didn't really anticipate. Migrant labor, shutting down of companies. I didn't throw demonetization in there, but things like that. Overnight, systems that you had set up in place were upended, and they were sort of cast by the side, and you had to now go figure out how you would actually react and work in this fashion. So these are very, very, I think, moving situations, and a lot of people lost livelihoods, lost processes, lost businesses, It was an extremely disruptive event in all of these, and we don't think of the ramifications. Next slide, please. CrowdStrike. uh, I, for one, didn't know what it was. I'm being very honest about this. And yet it was a huge thing. We don't think of heavy rains, climate change. I'm fairly certain a lot of organizations do not budget for climate change. And yet, if your people can't reach their offices, if the ability for, your processes don't work, your manufacturing plants are shut down, it doesn't matter. Climate change is going to hit you. If you look at imports from China being banned suddenly because India, China have a bit of a hostile relationship, or the US doesn't want you to use Chinese products in throughput to anything that you're selling into the US. If you're looking at shortage of energy, shortage of ships, cyber attacks from hostile state players, increasingly, a lot of our electricity grids are connected to the net. Increasingly, a lot of our educational stuff, our defense stuff, our health records. Just imagine, I don't mean to be a scaremonger, but just imagine if for some reason we were not able to safeguard our Aadhaar information, and somebody just went and cleared the servers and it was all wiped out. It will be a disaster of sorts. It'll be massively cataclysmic. So how do you safeguard? Now, sure, you and I, by that I mean people who are not involved with setting up and managing these defenses and services, don't have to worry about that, and that's someone else's job. But in a microcosm, that hostile state player can come and do something against you if you're a fairly significant player, and can destroy your data, can destroy all the stuff that you have, can destroy all the, can manipulate that information. It doesn't have to destroy it, it can manipulate it. So how do you know what is right and what is wrong? So that becomes a bit of a problem. Next slide, please, Meg. Sorry, I apologize. It seems to be going thrice, but we'll. So the CrowdStrike thing, just to give you guys, if and pardon me, if you guys have seen this, please put on chat that yes, we know it. I'll skip quickly, but I wanted to dwell on it for a few more minutes, which is it was one of the, if not the largest IT outage in history. 8 to 10 million people were affected globally. Almost 25,000 flights were delayed or cancelled. you know all kinds of things went awry, where there was dark screens everywhere and whatever. The damage that it supposedly has caused is of the order of $10 billion. You are going to have a situation where all of this happened because people were depending on Microsoft. So from that perspective, I don't know what we should be doing. Can we get rid of that? I'm not suggesting so, but I'm just saying these are dependencies that creep up on us. We don't understand this, and yet the someone and this happened because a file was uploaded and wasn't done in the right fashion. That's it. It is as innocuous as that, and yet it created mayhem. uh, because we are now becoming so interconnected, so connected on the web, so connected on everything that works on the internet, that our ability to think that these things could happen didn't until it hit us, and people didn't have a defense for that. Next slide, please, Mahek. So my suggestion to all of you would be, don't think narrow. This is the mistake all of us make. Uh, we often tend to forget that even if we are mid-level managers, our job is to make sure that the process is working or whatever. But you're a mid-level manager today, you're going to be a senior manager tomorrow. You could be a CXO in a short while. And I'm not trying to just blow sunshine up the proverbial. I'm just saying this is how you have to think about it. If your mindset is not attuned to thinking that you have to keep your vision a little broader, you're not going to overnight develop it as you grow senior. This is the manner in which you have to think about it. I will also be equally honest to say to you, not all your managers will support it and be appreciative of the fact, because maybe they don't think that way. But if you want to grow as a manager, there is no option. You have to think a little broader, because this is a training of the mind that comes with active purpose, with active effort. It doesn't happen organically. It's not a pill you can swallow and suddenly become strategic, or suddenly become something that you can look at a broader way. So I want to quickly run you through some of the things that I think qualifies disruptions and yet are completely often overlooked. Silent technological overload. What do I mean by that? There is so much incoming. This is AI, automation, platforms, various kinds of, workflow norms. It's becoming difficult for us to handle that. I mean, you might say that, oh, we can do that, but I'm fairly certain that you are not going to be able to handle everything that gets thrown at you. You're not going to be able to handle all the stuff that sort of, gets pumped out there, because the human brain does not work parallelly. I think we can take this offline and debate this, till the cows come home. But I'm a firm believer that the human mind is a fast sequential. You finish one task, you jump to the other, you process it, you come back. It makes it, the faster you do it, makes it seem like it's parallel, but we are not thinking parallel. So, excessive workload, excessive disruption, excessive information overload is a problem. And in the teams, this causes an issue because you sort of, want to shuffle decks, you want to do things differently. Uh, Sometimes hybrid work creates its own issues. I think hybrid work is very enabling. I'm not going to sit here and tell you what is right for the organization that you work for. In the sense, in some cases, hybrid is good. Some will say you have to be in the office. I think there are a lot of pros and cons for both. It's a function of the industry, the place, and there's a lot of things. But all I want to say is that you can have organizations working fine, but at the team level there could be things that are causing problems. And if there are enough things like that happening in different teams, your organization will not function well. So please be very cognizant of things like that. Next slide, please, Meg. Talent fluidity. Fancy words, but basically means that you either have quiet quitting, people just are fed up, not able to handle stuff, not able to, or just annoyed with what is happening. And you also have a bit of a mid-level skill migration, which needs to be done actively. Again, as skill sets that are required in different economies and different things that are happening around us, if we are not able to keep pace, if you're not able to make sure our teams are keeping pace, we will weaken our systems, we will weaken our teams. There is no way in which we can avoid doing that. Next slide, please, Meg. Same thing about information overload. If you keep having a lot of things pumped at you, beyond a point, you're going to do only things that matter to you. In the sense, you're going to look at a narrow kind of a set and you're going to let the others go by. As they say, I'll use Hindi here, kaam chalao. You do whatever it takes to get your work done and move on, because that is the key thing for you. So two other interesting points, which again people don't think of, is cultural alignments. Is there a culture first? And if there is one, and you have different kinds of people being thrown into it, whether you're doing lateral hiring or whether you're not caring about the kind of people you're hiring, and this is important for you. Today, you may not be doing a lot of active hiring as a middle manager. You may do some, but you may not do more. As you grow senior, if you're not hiring the right kind of people, and this is for a whole new different webinar or seminar maybe, is that if you're not thinking about the culture you are building, you will cause schisms, you will cause stress, you will cause tension, and it doesn't matter. Two brilliant people who fight like dogs and cats and dogs with each other will not take the organization forward. This is not about IQ, this is also as much about EQ. And in that sense, it is about culture. How do you actually do things? How do you actually behave? How do you actually make sure that the organization has a purpose and a value which you are trying to take forward? If there is no cohesion and a lack of clarity on that, just coming up to work at 8 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock in the morning, doing your thing and going back is not going to take the organization anywhere. You might argue, that's what I'm getting paid for, that's what I will do, sure, but the chances are therefore that you will go to the next level because of that are also lesser, in my opinion. Ethical and AI, I don't want to dwell on too much, but because it should be blindingly obvious. Ethics and reputation are like walking on eggshells, with apologies to the vegetarians. I'm one myself. If you crack an egg, doesn't matter how good your Fevicol ka jod is, or whatever, or super glue, it will show. The cracks will show. So be very careful of that. You cannot rebuild trust. Once trust is broken, the people will always be suspicious. This is equally true for your clients, equally true for your suppliers and vendors, and equally true for your teams. If people can't trust that when you say or do something and mean something, that is what you are actually going to be delivering on, people will not take you at face value. And the other thing about sorry, about AI disruptions is that Today, there is so much information, so much things that AI can do. If you're not careful, the chances are you're relying too much on it will cause integrity issues. I have only one word to say about AI: be very, very careful. Because what agentic AI is now, or at least our progress towards that, is creating, is a very slick system which sounds very fancy, gives you a nice sounding answer. But if you're not careful and you're not able to parse the garbage from the good, the chances are you will get sucked into believing something that is not necessarily true. Next slide, please, Mehak. So be very careful that you have to not get caught up into that trap. Uh, Lastly, I mean, I don't want to spend too much time on this because we'll sort of speed on, but environmental and psychological disruptions, again, burnout, change, fatigue, so much change is happening, so much stuff is happening that, you start getting, you're not able to handle it. We all have our work life pressures. We all have our, work life balances. We have people we love and care about that we need to go to. We need to go back and spend time with them. Sometimes the amount of work or whatever we have to, so we have to find a way to make sure that everybody in our teams is able to handle that. Again, I don't want to spend too much time on this. So the only point I want to make is the resilience gap. Sometimes the tendency is to rely on our star performers and sort of give them too much or expect too much of them. That's a two-way problem. One, you could burn them out by not giving them enough time to sort of recover, recuperate. The other is you make the others feel substandard. For me, it's like a football team. If you have a star striker, but everybody else is lousy, doesn't matter. You're not going to win too many games. That's just the way it is. Next slide, please, Mike. That's just the way a team sport gets played. So, what do these words mean to you? Resilience, supply chains, technology, and well-being. We'll quickly try to run through these. So resilience. Next slide, please. For me, resilience is a mindset. When you look at a mindset, how many of you would actually look at a vendor and see if they are resilient? Uh, no insinuations, but I suspect a lot of people will not look at the resilience. How do you measure internally your team's resilience? Do you have a way of figuring out? Do you have a resilience score? Do you have a way of checking out your customers' resilience? You'll say, why is that necessary? Of course, it is. There, you're buying your product. If for a reason your customer gets disrupted or is not in a position where they can absorb and impact change, then overnight your existence becomes a problem, because it doesn't matter if you're solid and you're great and you build a wonderful product. Next slide, please, Mike. You're going to have a situation because there's no one else who's going to buy your things. So you have to start looking at how do you look at this. So in some sense, this is the kind of a model that I would look at building resilience. You start with the unseen. Okay, you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know how things are. That causes a disruption. The disruption creates a bit of a ripple. You have to recognize that. If you don't recognize the ripple, you are going to see that ripple turn into a bigger wave and hit you. The moment you have a ripple and you recognize it, sorry, you start what I call rehearsing and reinforcing. You understand what's happening. You start building a moat around what is the way to stop that change from adversely affecting you. You recalibrate. You see where the chinks are in your armor. You see where the moat is weak. You see where the defenses are a little weak, and you recalibrate to make sure that you're sort of building that up such that now you're ready for the next one, unseen. So notice I have not stopped at recalibration. I've gone back to unseen, because I truly and firmly believe you're never going to stop having this cycle. Resilience means being able to go through this cycle as many times as you need, coming out stronger at the end of it all the time. Next slide, please, Mike. You're going to keep seeing that you are going to have a way of trying to make sure that you're ready for the next. So to me, resilience is mindset. It means stress testing. It means recognizing, rehearsing, and reinforcing. And it also means not just never resting on your laurels, but not even resting. Because now, look, I'm not. Next slide, please, Meg. I'm not trying to suggest that all of us have to be energizer bunnies and keep sort of going hyper about things. But you have to have a sense that these things are things that will keep happening. We have to keep making sure, and we have to be willing and ready to absorb and take that change as and when things happen. Moving to supply chains. So the second point that I was talking about, when supply chains is mentioned, usually what do we think of? I think of vendors, suppliers, raw materials, traditional, next slide, please, Meg. We think of most of these things. This is the natural way because we're talking of supplying stuff to us. We do something with that and then we ship a process out for the most parts. Even if you're a service industry, that's what you will think of. But supply chains now has a lot of these things. You have a just in case, you have geopolitical risk, you have energy risk, you have green logistics, labor shortage, AI, port congestion, reshoring, critical, and China plus one. I mean, for crying out loud, how many of us had heard of that? Next slide, please. How many of us had heard of what a China plus one is? And I'll briefly talk about it. Someone has made a very nice quote. It says the new supply chain isn't metal anymore. It's digital. Oh, great! Some of you have heard of China plus one. That's phenomenal. Thank you. Uh, do you think of labor and talent when you think of supply chain? Do you have an adequate talent of suppose two of your key team members leave? Do you have a strategy? Do you have a process? That is a disruption. That is a supply chain, supply of labor in that case. I don't want to call your managerial talent or your team supply, but at the crudest form it is. If you don't have the right kind of talent sitting on your teams or on your desks, how are you going to actually perform and operate? It's almost impossible. And how many of us think of climate or ESG as part of this calculus? I for one, didn't. But increasingly, when I was hit with COVID, when I was running the businesses, when I was hit with, some people in my teams in a different area were hit with. I had teams sitting in Indonesia who, if there was an earthquake or whatever, had a problem. There were teams in Philippines. I had guys in some parts of Malaysia or Thailand where there was flooding or things like that. It was a big issue. It was a massive, massive issue. And one thing I want to leave with you is when we think about stuff all the time, we have to think of substitutes. We have to say, what if I don't have this anymore? Is there anything else that I can? Next slide, please, Meg. Is there anything else that I can look at? If suppose miraculously I was able to get three things that would do the same thing for me, do I have the ability to understand how that might work? Now coming to the China plus one. Someone on the chat has just said that they have, so that's phenomenal. But there are many people who don't know what a China plus one strategy is. Do you have one? Can it be articulated, or is it just something that you go by seat of pants saying, again to use Hindi, dekhenge, we'll figure it out, we'll decide what happens and so on and so forth. And when you look at your supply chains, of course you will look at the other things like vendors and suppliers and whatever, but geopolitical risks, do you look at regulatory risks? These are things which people don't think of. I'll give you an example. Next slide, please, Mike. If you think of regulatory risks, so if suppose someone suddenly randomly changes the GST, okay, do you know how your people will handle it? Do you know how your vendors are equipped for it? I mean adversely, if they cut GST, it's usually a good thing. But if suppose the taxes went up, or if suppose something like demonetization or something similar, God forbid, were to happen again, do you know what your supply chain will be able to react? I want to take a quick 2 minutes to talk about rare earths because so much is said about rare earths. I, for one, when I was studying chemistry, and that was many moons ago, would not have been able to tell you where on the periodic table rare earths lie. It just wasn't a thing. Okay, and yet today so much is talked about rare earths. So again, if you could just go to the next few bullets, please, Mac. Uh, can you name these rare earths? Where are they used? A lot of us today are involved in some part of the EV or the battery or the magnets or things like that, solar cells and stuff like that. A lot of these elements are now are front and center. Do you know where they get refined? Do you know the fact that 90% of the rare earths of the world get refined in China? Doesn't matter where you mine them. So let's say, for the sake of argument, tomorrow India comes up with a huge deposit of a rare earth material that they can mine. Can India refine it? No, because China has been busy building that resilience from 5-10 years ago. Today is such that a F-35 jet in the US gets rare earths that are refined in China. That's the dependency and that's the resilience that China has built. But think of it from the US's point of view. Next slide, please. They've become extremely, extremely dependent on the Chinese refining. Technology, that's my next point. It's a phenomenal leveler, right? They say technology is the great leveler. Sure, but is it a leveler of the playing field or is it leveling you out? Because suppose technology then suddenly now creates a situation where your competitor who had a, because of your high barrier to entry for that person to come in, now can do it like that because of technology. If you're not on the right side of technology, you're toast. If you're on the right side, good for you. You will enjoy you will be able to, reap the fruits and whatever else for a little longer. If you're not, you're going to have a huge time trying to figure out how to do this. And invariably, reacting to a situation is always harder, is always tougher, and is always more problematic than if you anticipated it. So I would say embrace technology. It's a double-edged sword, but your options of not embracing technology will only lead to a situation where the ability for you to get disrupted or disruption to hit you, whichever way you want to look at it, will be larger. Let me explain to you what I mean by a double-edged sword. It increases productivity and efficiency. It enhances the user experience, right? Because you now have a website, or you have SAP, or you're using some kind of an SAS service, SaaS service, and you're able to get stuff done. There is more efficiency in which your working capital, and so on and so forth. Your ability to ship stuff in and out, your ability to collaborate, all those things are wonderful. But it also means that people are losing jobs. Is there a way in which you can actually figure out how you take care of that? For me, just blindly saying that let's take in technology, fire people is not a panacea. You have to be cognizant of the structure you are in, the society you are in, and you have to be able to think about that. Just because something is automated doesn't automatically make it better. It has its advantages, but there's always pros and cons. You should always weigh the stuff. And the more connected you are, the greater is the risk that your IP could get stolen. You could have cyber attacks. You could have a situation like the CrowdStrike thing. Some of you may know this, but some of you may not. What is ransomware? Increasingly, that's a problem. Ransomware is essentially when people put in malicious software and either disallow you from doing stuff or take your data away and say you have to pay me money if you want that stuff released, or you need the data back. Do you have a defense against that? And if you don't, what are the chances that you're essentially opening yourself up to doing something that, next slide, please, Meg, that could be a problem. Many people don't think of, defenses against ransomware, and that is a problem because you are so deeply connected to the internet and to the global world that there are people who are malicious players who are always on the lookout. I'll re-emphasize this point on embracing technology. It is here to stay. Don't fight it. It is a little silly on your part to just say randomly that technology is good or technology is bad. If I had a gun to head, I would say technology is something you should adopt because it will help you. AI is here to stay. Let's be very honest. But I would say understand it. Read the pros and cons. Understand what prompt engineering is. Understand what agentic AI is. Understand what AI can help. It's like saying when Excel first came in, there must have been people who said, rubbish. I'm going to take my handheld calculator and, or that machine and keep punching it and doing stuff. And yet here we are. Nobody thinks of Excel as being malicious today. It's a massive productivity booster. There are elements of AI, there are elements of technology which are extremely powerful. Understand how to use that. Articulate your stance on technology. If you're a middle manager, I can appreciate that you don't form the view on technology, but understand how you think about technology. What is it that you're trying to achieve? If you give people an impression that the moment I can automate this, I don't need you, people will resist it. People like change. People just don't like abrupt, inexplicable, and rapid change. If today I told you, look, over the next 3 years, this is what's going to happen. We are going to reskill you. We are going to make you more efficient such that the mundane stuff gets done by a machine, but you move on to bigger and better things. Almost all the people will sign up for that. If you just tell people, oh, we've introduced a new software which will now help you look at customer this, that, and the other, and it just gets slid in, the first job that the customer representative or whatever is going to say, okay, hang on, this means I'm going in 6 months. And if that happens, either they will definitely go before 6 months because they will find a way to get out and go to somewhere else, or they will make sure that they will stall it. And then you will say, oh, this person has become a bad apple, doesn't help, is not embracing technology. But what role are you playing in making sure that that gets done? So help your team upskill. Next slide, please, Meg. Help your team upskill. help them understand what your technology stance is, help them understand what your view is. So I'll come to the closing and saying all this is wonderful, this is happening outside. What can you do? Because you as a manager are also going to have a very important role to play to make sure that the team is resilient. And what is team today? Maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 people, may tomorrow be 200, 500 people. It's the mindset. If you don't have the ability to think and work in that fashion, you're not going to be able to scale it. So you can do a lot. Ask yourself, we often have very high expectations of what we think our boss should be. They should be doing this, they should be doing that. If they had done this, I would have been able to handle this disruption better, this and that. Are you that person? Are you that person for your teammates? Are you able to do that? And if not, then start. Because if you want to progress and you want to work ahead and you want to move ahead, your subordinates, your team members have to look up to you as a person who will guide them and lead them forward. I don't want to talk about the various stages of leadership, but that is also a way in which you want to cultivate your leadership style. Do you have empathy? Do you have genuine care or concern? Are you a culture carrier? Do you even know what a culture carrier is? Is there a culture that you're carrying? Are you willing to take feedback? You should. There are a lot of people I have worked with in my various positions and careers. There's this often thing that people will say, I have an open door policy. You can come and tell me anything you want anytime you want. And I say this something maybe only half facetiously, not fully facetiously, is people who say they have an open door have a closed mind. uh, because you shouldn't have to advertise that you have an open door policy. People should know by the way in which you take feedback. People should know that you're willing to take something. Don't assume that you are the repository of all wisdom and knowledge. There are people who might be able to come and tell you how to do things differently, and you might be then able to take that and strengthen your defenses. I'm going back to the recalibrating and strengthening the moat to make sure that disruptions, you are not going to be able to see all the problems that as you become more senior. Think of it metaphorically. As you climb the mountain and go to the top of the mountain, you're not going to know what's going to happen at the base of the mountain. You need your people at the base of the mountain to tell you this is a problem, this is not happening correctly. You have to encourage them. If they come and give you feedback, if you slap them down, next slide please, Mehak. If you slap them down and say, oh, हर समय परेशान करता है, negative होता है, comes and tells me stuff and whatever, you are essentially telling them, I don't value what you're saying, or you don't know what you're doing. You have to learn to be a bit of a mentor. And for that, I mean, you have to listen first, try to take stuff in, and figure out what is it that they are trying to tell you. They may be trying to tell you something which they are not able to articulate so well. But it is your job as a middle manager and as someone who is sort of destined to go higher to pick out the right elements of it and make sure that you appreciate what they're doing. IDK is modern lingo, Gen Z lingo, whatever. It could mean I don't care, or it could mean I deeply care, right? It is a function of how you decide. And this is where I want to leave a small thing, which is an aside for you. We often say a lot of things, but people watch how we do things. Do you have I'll use Hindi here. Do you have a special chai sutta group that you go out with? 3 people you always hang out, your drinking buddies. People see this. If you are looking to build a resilient team, you are going to have to make sure that everybody on the team thinks of themselves as being as close to you as the other person. If they feel you have favorites, if they feel that you are closer to some people versus the other, you're not going to build a resilient team. I'm not suggesting that you should not have friends, you should treat everybody aloof, but people should know that you're completely fair when it comes to treating one person of the team versus the other. Signaling, perceptions, mannerisms, how you conduct yourselves absolutely matter. And that is why I would leave some things like, go look out for Simon Sinek. I love the guy. He talks a lot about disruption. He talks a lot about leadership. He says one thing, which is leaders eat last. I also want to add one thing to that is leaders eat and speak last. If you're in a meeting and you start with telling people your view, someone who has a view opposed to you or thinks that what we are going to implement is a bad idea will not say it, especially if he or she is already a little hesitant about his or her social dynamic with you, or is a introvert or whatever. So encourage others to speak first. encourage others to sort of, come up with ideas. And then by all means take that. And if you need, recalibrate some of the stuff you have to say. Next slide, please, Meg. So don't pretend to be the know-it-all. I've seen this. I know exactly how this is done. Oh, I've been here long enough. Don't tell me how things are getting done. These are put-offs. These will not help your team become resilient. You cannot take a blue pill or a green pill or a black pill or a red pill and make your team resilient. It has to be done organically, brick by brick, person by person. You have to spend enormous number of man hours, or people hours, to be politically correct, to try and make sure that your team becomes resilient and can handle disruption. I would say yourself and your teams have to be hungry to learn more. Widen your horizons, broaden your horizons. Look at stuff. A lot of things that I wanted to leave with you on what I would consider disruption are a different lens, or a 20, 30, 40,000 foot view. Don't get stuck in the trenches. Yes, the trenches matter. Yes, the trenches are where we all live and die and survive and whatever and have to get the job done. But they're also the place where you cannot see beyond the tip of your nose. That's not going to help you as an organization. And Andy Grove, ex-CEO of Intel, had coined this term, and he actually wrote a book about it, about going only the paranoid survive. It's a great title. I'm not suggesting you start, becoming paranoid about life and whatever else. But what it essentially tells you is that you have to constantly be thinking about stuff. So my version of Andy Grove's, saying is blithely, if you coast, you are toast. Which is the moment you start thinking and saying all sorted, I know exactly how it is done, I know what is to be done, you are likely going to slide away. So I'm going to try and stop here. I think there's a lot of stuff I've thrown at you. I'd love to leave a few minutes for some kind of Q&A discussion. If there isn't, and I've been blindingly obvious and clear, then that's good news for me. But otherwise, I'm happy to have anybody who'd like to have a quick chat or discuss something, and or put it on the chat, whatever works for you guys. So I'll just stay muted for a while, and if anybody has a question, they're most welcome to ask.
I think you could unmute yourself if you have a question. Or anyone else, if they have a question, they could unmute or put it in the chat box.
I have one. This is Anindya.
And yeah.
Hey, see, when I reflect on disruption, it has been there. Even if you look at the last 1,000 years of just data, whether it is a natural disaster or an invasion or a plague, or these are all disruptions, which basically breaks down the supply chain of something which has been stable for a while. Now, in the current times, everything, what has happened is the frequency of disruptions have increased gradually. And right now, what we are seeing probably for the first time is that there are multiple disruptions happening at the same time. Question is, as a professional, how I have been very comfortable in stable business models, and I could anticipate what will happen in the next year, next 5 years of my career. I'm looking at a hierarchical growth path as per HR, what the HR puts up. So as a professional, where does this stand now? What kind of organizations are we going to look at? Because that's going to define what kind of career I will have as a mid-level manager going ahead, right? So what do you think would be the future organization, or not even so future, even in the next couple of years? How would organizations reshape to respond to such disruptions, which will actually affect my career path?
A great question. I think what will probably change is that you're going to have to stop looking at monolithic, vertical kind of pillars that go all the way to the top, where it's a very hierarchical kind of a chain. And yet you'll have to give a lot of autonomy. So let me try and see if I can use the analogy of, say, crack commando units or crack, defense kind of units. Because what happens there is, one, their sense of purpose is very clearly defined. So in that team, there is nobody who doesn't understand what they need to deliver. Yet the hierarchical structure within that microcosm is always preserved. There is no ambiguity on who calls the shots. does not mean that the person who is leading that team doesn't have a good connection or a rapport. The people in the team, I'm not suggesting that, companies start behaving that way, but the soldiers and the commandos on the team will give their lives for their commander. Okay, so that is the level of trust. If the commander says jump, they don't ask why, they only say how high or how many times. So, but that is a trust that is built over time and is something that, is not something you can build overnight. So I suspect the organizations we will see a lot more autonomy coming down, where people are not micromanaging each and everything. You're given a lot of flex to try and react to change, because as you rightly said, the frequency of change has happened has gone very rapid, and in my opinion, both the amplitude and the frequency have changed. The amplitude, the shocks are higher and they get transmitted much faster. If you think of Wall Street crashes and great depressions and whatever, if I can take you back in time, these took a long time to happen, then they transmitted slowly, and then the next one happened after a long time, so you could almost recover, come back, and whatever. That doesn't happen. We have COVID, then we have something else, then we have a taper tantrum, then we have had Fukushima. I'm of course throwing it all over the timeline. I'm just saying things are happening so fast. If you don't have the ability to react, now this also means that not just the individual teams, but the organization has to always constantly keep probing the vulnerabilities. If you don't keep testing vulnerabilities, so you're going to have organizations that become more dynamic, become more autonomous at some level, and give that strategic flex, if you will, at a lower level, then be extremely hierarchical. And you're also going to have people who have clarity of vision. Again, I will rely on Simon Sinek's point, is they understand the why, as to why are they doing and what are they doing. If they don't understand that, the chances are that they will be caught out short on that one. So when you have organizations that do this, I suspect you will see some success. And those are the organizations I would love to work for, to be honest, going forward. Not sure if that answers your question, but that's how I think about it.
Thanks. I think a quick, as you were talking about it, quick follow up question is, as a manager, I am used to a certain kind of job role and responsibility, primarily managing either a set of people or a product or a set of customers, or all three of them. That's what's considered to be my skill set. In this new kind of environment and organization, what are the top two or three new skills as a manager would the new type of organizations look for? Because that's where I will find my next job.
Sure. I wish I had a magic wand, but if I had to approach it, I would do two things. One is I would make sure that and in no particular order, my people skills would be taken to a higher level. If I don't understand the kind of people I'm working with, if I don't understand the kind of, things that, if I'm not able to carry my team with me, it doesn't matter. I will not be successful. So I think I need to work on my people skills. The other thing I would need to work on is to make sure that I'm trying to keep pace with what technology is doing, because technology is going to be such a rapid disruptor, and in so many ways that I don't think we fully understand it as well. So you're never going to be an expert on everything, but your ability to absorb information, you have to be reading more. You have to be trying to get, upskilling your understanding of these things more. If that is not done systematically, consciously, and all the time, then I think there is a risk you will run of disintermediating yourself, or figuring out that you're reliant on a set of skills that nobody values anymore. As long as there are people, and I'm a firm believer that you're not going to have machines take over, and we are not all going to be sitting in our woodside cabin by the river trying to earn a living by fishing. I am not a believer in that. I think there will be things, a lot of things that we can and will do as humans. Machines will increasingly do a lot of the stuff as well. So our ability to sort of straddle both, if you will be extremely key, Ananda. I think you have to sort of those are the skills I would focus on, and those are the jobs that I think will be there for us to take.
Thanks, Niraj. Thank you.
No worries. I think I have two questions on the
Yeah, in the
chat
chat.
rooms. So let me take Pranav's question first, which is, since rare earths are so concentrated in China, do you think markets and investors can actually help solve that dependence, or is it more a political industrial issue than a financial one? The financial issue, I think, is subservient to the political and industrial one. You China didn't know that it would be in a position to do this, and yet the state went out and made sure that it invested large sums of money in making sure it had the industrial wherewithal to do what it needs. It's also a social problem because rare earth refining is a very dirty business, and by that I mean it is polluting, right? So there are things that you need to do there. So I suspect that this is, if I had to choose one or the other, I would say it's a political industrial issue first. India, and this is the risk where I'm sort of going into a bit of a segue, needs to think very hard about the kind of industrial base it will build. Otherwise, all its ability or desire or talk of resilience will come to naught. If you're dependent on someone else to give you stuff, it's not going to happen. Uh, Very quickly on what Hardik is saying, which department or function in large should take on the how to react? This is to be everybody's job, Hardik. You can't outsource this to anyone. For example, if you outsource this to HR, HR will do it in their particular way. If you outsource this to an innovation department, it's like it's everybody's responsibility. Again, to use a cliche, defense is everybody's responsibility. If you're walking on the street and you see there used to be a time when this was a bigger problem. You see a package, suspicious package in a train or whatever, you have these advertisements. If you say, oh, that's not my job, that's the security guy or that's the investigator's job, then it's not going to help. It's all our jobs. Everybody has to do this. So what you have to do as a manager is to make sure you empower teams that are wanting to do change. So if you, let's say you're a manager, let's say you're running a large organization of 200 plus people, and there's a group of 20 people in your team, in your organization, let's put yourself in that place, who are coming up with a way which is slightly different, want to try something new. How are you going to approach it? If you're saying, no, 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 this is not something we're going to do, don't waste time and effort and money, you are essentially telling people, I'm not interested in change, keep doing what you have to until it hits me in the face, and then I'm going to do something about it. If you're going to take a step back and say, okay, what is it that you want? Is there a calibrated way in which we can do this without really affecting this? Can we sort of try and see what it does? And if it's helpful, we can replicate it. You're telling people, actively signaling to them that I'm open to change. I'm open to challenge status quo, but just because you said it, I'm not going to change everything. Prove to me. I'll give you a little bit of resources. You prove to me it's a valid idea. It's a great idea. And let's take this forward. That's how I would have done it. That's how I would expect most people would want to do it. And then it gives the team below a bit of, energy, because they're like, okay, good. So we can do something with this. That creates its own passion and its motivation and, sort of its own momentum, if you will. Not sure if that answers your questions, Pranav and Hardik, but that's how I would look at it.
Neeraj, if I may take Hardik's question, it's an interesting one I see because,
Sure.
uh, you know, should because he's quoted, how to better react when there is a disruption. Okay. Now the question is, it's related to the question I asked earlier. Should organizations now be designed or or have strategy way ahead than rather react? Because disruption now is the new normal. So the question is, wouldn't it be more like a strategy at a top-down level rather than leave it to people to react?
Totally, and I think you're right. Thank you for pointing that out. I think when I reread the question with a lot more detail, I think yes. I was looking more at how are you going to be prepared for disruptions that happen. But if it has already happened, it has to be top down, because you want to make sure that the clarity is there across the entire organization, that people are, sort of moving in that. So thank you for pointing that out, Anando. But you're right. And even the empowerment that I was talking of on the forward looking, if you will, path has to be from the top, because that's where the power sits. If you think about it, if a disruption has happened, your first reaction has to be to make sure quickly to check the moat and figure out what has been breached. Where are we most at risk at? And how do we actually understand? And then perhaps the people at the top are the best ones to decide who then goes and repairs that breach, if there is one, or goes and fortifies it more. So to belabor the point, absolutely at the top, but I'm taking a step away and saying, sorry, looking forward, looking ahead, looking into the future. if you had to sort of make sure that you are doing this on a more strategic basis, then that has to also come from the top, empowering the smaller teams. Not sure if I'm, adding clarity. I hope I've not confused it more, but that's how I would think, Anando.
Sure, sure. Thank you. Thank you.
I think there are no more questions, then I think. Okay. So that brings us to the close of today's discussion. On behalf of Ahmedabad University and everyone present, I'd like to thank you, Professor Niraj, for
Thank
sharing
you.
your insights and experiences with us. We deeply appreciate your time and contribution. I would also like to thank all the attendees for being part of this session. Wishing you all a good evening ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.